I'm your co-host for this wonderful panel today. My name is Chester Elton, co-author of Anxiety at Work and Leading with Gratitude. And I'm joined as a co-host by my dear friend and co-author, Adrian Gostick. Adrian, wave to the crowd and give yourself a little introduction.
Hi, everybody. Adrian Gostick here, and we're thrilled that you're joining us from around the world today. We've got some great guests. We're going to have a great discussion, and we'll get started in about a minute here.
So let's introduce our panel of experts. These are people that Adrian and I have known for some time now, and we have great admiration not only for their work as professionals, but as their work as people. So Xavier Joly, would you give us a
Chester, if you could do the introduction, that'd be awesome. And then I'll do the intros of everybody. That'd be great.
You know what? Let's do that. Welcome, everybody, to today's session. This is Vantage Point, a view from the top. We're going to talk about employee engagement in the post-COVID world. It's sponsored by, as you heard from Nikhil, by Vantage Circle. And today we want to share insights on how to enhance employee engagement in a workplace that's going hybrid or not hybrid or all hybrid, depending where you are in the world. Some people are returning to work while others are working remotely. And our guests today are going to share tools and techniques and explain how technology is helping to streamline and automate employee engagement programs for the hybrid workforce. With me today is my good friend, Adrian Gostick, who keeps me on track and reminds me that I'm doing the introduction and you're doing the bios. So Adrian, have at it.
That's great. Thanks, Jess. And we do have three amazing guests today to discuss this topic. First off, we have Melisa Salibi joining us from Dubai today. She is Chief Human Resources Officer and a member of the management board of Kempinski Hotels. Now, they're headquartered in Switzerland. They employ 19,000 people around the world in 80 luxury hotels. We have Nabeela Ixtabalan, our good friend, Executive Vice President of People and Corporate Affairs for Walmart Canada, and she is responsible for 100,000 associates across Canada and joins us today from very snowy Edmonton. Also joining us is Xavier Joly, who is Vice President of Human Resources for Bayer Crop Science. Now, Xavier leads all people, cultural, and organizational change efforts for Bayer Corp's crop science, vegetable seeds, environmental science, human resources community. So we have a really different perspectives, people from around the world, all worrying about employee engagement. Now, Nabeela, you and I were chatting a little while ago, and as we started discussing employee engagement in this new hybrid world, you say there's been a disproportionate impact on the engagement of women in the workforce. So, especially as we start now talking about hybrid, coming back to work, walk us through this idea and why we need to be more aware of this as leaders. Oops, you're a little muted there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adrian. So I think just taking us a little bit back to the beginning of the pandemic, we saw, I think it was dubbed this she session. We saw a disproportionate impact on women, resulting in many women leaving the workforce at the beginning of the pandemic. And really our focus on really supporting women started there, because when we saw that trend happening, we decided not to allow it to happen. So we assembled a task force to say, how do we buck this trend? We looked at all of the support mechanisms that we have around our women leadership and the support we have around women, and we reimagined them. And I really want to give a shout out to TKS, the Knowledge Society. It's based out of Toronto. They're a WEF school that is rethinking education. And one of the things that they do is they take teenagers and they teach them how to do PhD level work in less than 6 months. So we reached out to them and we said, if you can do that, if you can take a 13 or 14, 15-year-old and teach them how to do PhD level work in STEM in 6 months, help us reimagine how we support women leadership. And we reimagined all of our programs. We enhanced our maternity and paternity leave programs. We really wrapped our arms around our female leaders. And a year later, we not only bucked the she session trend, we've actually seen improvement in gender representation. So we had a first cohort of this new development program, and we set a goal that 90% would be promoted in the first year, and we reached 88% were promoted at least one level or more. Mm-hmm. We have actually in the field where our store managers and new store managers traditionally have been more male dominated, 71% of our new store managers are women. And so really this came down to a mindset amongst leadership. We weren't going to allow, the pandemic to wash away years and years of work towards gender balance and gender diversity. And we kind of really just collectively said we were not going to let this happen. It resulted in us kind of taking an ecosystem approach to rethink all of our programs, from our benefits to our leadership development to sponsorship. Just everything was on the table. And we set really ambitious goals. We actually pulled forward our gender balance goals. So instead of using the pandemic as a reason to say it's going to take us longer to get gender representation, we actually pulled the goal forward. And we've seen remarkable results. So we're basically taking that entire experience that we've been through over the last year, and we're applying it to hybrid work. Because we've also heard that women are more concerned about what the hybrid work will look like. Again, we know that women, especially women with school-age children, have been disproportionately affected and continue to be. So even though women have returned to the workforce, their experience they're still struggling in many ways. So it starts with listening again to the women in our workforce about what they need. It starts with a mindset that we won't kind of allow the move to hybrid to, again, degrade our ambitions to be gender balanced across the organization. And it goes back to reimagining everything that we do to support women in a hybrid world, from part-time roles to job sharing to benefits. Everything's on the table, and that's currently the work that we're in. So I look forward, Adrian, next year to coming back and sharing equally strong results around women in a hybrid world as we've seen so far.
That's just terrific. I'm curious, going around the table here, the same question. Xavier, you're in an industry that's usually more male dominated with STEM industry. How are you approaching this issue?
I think it's a great question on your side. I believe that nowadays the gender diversity is a no-brainer anymore. Everybody is agree on that. The matter is really how you make it happen and how you transition from the ground where you are and to the target. And the target, I think Nabeela said it right. You need to set it as high as possible, and in a way that you really impulse into your organization a sense of urgency. If you set to yourself too short, then at the end of the day you won't get much. So in Bayer, what we have been doing is really to set very ambitious goals on gender diversity and also in inclusion diversity. And I think the past 2 or 3 years with the pandemic, we have been accelerating even further, because I think we have been able to really, I would say, to leverage the pandemic in a way that it has been very much rewarding in terms of gender diversity, inclusion diversity, and so on and so forth. And we really established some special plans for talent development, sponsorship program that were targeting the female leaders. And something that we've been even one step forward is really for each and every position that are at stake in Bayer, we are ensuring a diverse slate. We are making sure that we have a diverse slate. And something that I'm very proud of, in the early stage of our transformation in vegetable seeds, we have implemented a new leadership team based on some cultural traits, cultural behaviors that we wanted our leaders to role model. And when we selected the team, we were very much in the focus on this how versus the what. Because the what, we knew that we had a strong strategy. We were wondering how we are going to implement it. And when I did present the leadership team to my boss very quickly asked me, what's the percentage in gender diversity? And I said, I didn't make the count. I have to count with you. So I count on live with her, and we came up with a result that was 60% female leaders and 40% male leaders. And I'm very proud to say that, because we have first and foremost selected our leaders on the cultural values and not on the gender diversity. The gender was a consequence of our choice, where we were selected the best in class. And believe me or not, in the shoes of the employees, it did act as a game changer. And along the transformation, now our leaders feel more included, and they feel more empowered, and the leaders and the female leaders feel normally recognized and acknowledged. So I'm very proud of our state of where we are today. And of course, we have plans to go further and accelerate.
Melisa, what would you add?
Wow. I wish I could give such success stories. I think, the interesting fact with hospitality has really been that we've got quite a diverse workforce, but also at the same time, quite a balanced male to female ratio. And diversity is not just about that, right? It's such a big picture. But Kempinski has always been very much, we don't really segregate between the two. We are very pro developing of all of our talent. So, I would not go and say, we really focus only on our females, although that has been identified as a gap in our senior leadership positions in hotels and also in a more senior vice president above level. So this is something that we have, of course, highlighted, and we have worked on programs throughout the year actually to do so. I think the interesting thing it's a very cultural thing too, because if we look at China and our properties in China, we actually have a bigger female ratio, compared to our male ratio, and then exactly the opposite in Middle East. I think for me, very important what my fellow panelists have said as well. I think it's just really listen to what your employees need. The leadership really needs to be empowered. That leader on the ground who knows this talent, really have a strong succession plan in place. We followed really the basic rules of identifying that talent, putting them on a plan to really succeed and then be promoted eventually. I mean, we unfortunately put a lot of stop on our programs only because we had to close quite a few hotels around the world because of the pandemic, which was a bit of a different, side to the COVID, unfortunately. However, we're back on track. We've reopened all of these discussions, and it's definitely, at the forefront, specifically related to ESG, our sustainability, and how we approach diversity overall.
Interesting, when you focus on it, things happen, right? You identify the problem, you talk about it, you put things in place, you measure, and things happen. So, Xavier, I want to go to you about upper management's conversations about the hybrid workforce and now inviting people back to work, right? I know that you've done a reboot. Are you having to incentivize people to come? Like, is it free lunch? What are you doing to get people to come back in person?
That's a terrific question. And we are still facing this challenge to get our people back from a sustainable point of view. I think each of us, we set and we reprioritize ourselves in terms of our relationship with the work. And the hybrid model becomes the new normalcy. Now the true challenge is to find a good balance between having people working from home and working from the office. And depending on where you sit in the different geographies, and depending in which city you are living in, I think the setbacks or challenges are different. So, and you need to acknowledge that. So if I take the example of the US, recently we reopened our facility in St. Louis in Missouri, and we wanted to create a special event for that because we wanted to create a kind of buzz or momentum to attract people back. We were very happy to see people back. 80% of people turn up, so which is really a good turnaround. And I must say that I felt people very happy to see each other after 2+ years working remotely. Now, if I look backwards, we are 3 weeks down the road. Very, very few people came back sustainably at the office. Because I think what we need to understand is that if we want to get our people back to the office, we need to create an environment that is attractive and where people feel important to invest time in commuting, and so on and so forth. So I feel that within Bayer, we are trying to find this path moving forward. And also, I can also reflect on some of the meetings that are happening where some of us are physically present and some of us are calling in. And the natural human tendency is to get the people who are in the room jeopardizing the meeting. And I think we need to be mindful when you are in this setup to not create what did happen in the past, where everything was happening in the room and where basically people we were calling in, we were feeling like a guest at best. So we have to be disciplined, to probably find some rules, and also to get some learnings out of the way. In a nutshell, I believe that it will take some time to get a good balance in the hybrid model. And I'm not discussing about the hybrid model as such. I think it's each of us, we have a responsibility as a leader to find a good balance and to give enough flexibility to our people to adjust.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? People showed up for the party, and then once there wasn't a party, there was no reason to show up.
Exactly.
So, Melisa, talk a little bit about, how are you bringing people back to the workplace that have been used to working in a hybrid environment?
Yeah, that's, so interesting because, again, that's really just applying to our corporate and offices. All the hotels had to be there. But it's so, for me, it's such a fairness thing. For me, I felt really, as an HR, and we deal with this, how do we create fairness across the board and we make sure we treat everyone equally? I really struggled with that because in Dubai, for example, our regional office where I'm based, only really closed for that short lockdown period in 2020. Then everybody went back to the office. So for me, it was quite normal to be there. I found it actually better to balance between, home and work that way. And then in our other Europe offices, we put them on short-time work, for example. So they had to work from home because it didn't make sense to commute less hours. So however, people in Dubai didn't complain. I think the culture is also very different. And they couldn't wait to come. Actually, everybody emailed, when can we come to the office? We want to get away from home. So I really struggle to find a balance in that sense of fairness versus, culturally and local laws. But what we did basically is, when we brought everyone back, it was really only recently, maybe a few months back, because the rules in Switzerland was very different to Dubai for that matter. And they relaxed the regulations, and luckily business is in an upturn and we don't require people on short-time work anymore. So now it makes sense. But really relating to Xavier, it's quite difficult to get people back. I think they got used to having that flexibility. I also think that flexibility can be, now they're finding but why am I coming to the office? So finding that very important fine line of balance and also that camaraderie, that water cooler chats, I think everybody really missed. So we just really, first of all, insist, look, we really want you all to come back. It's time, let's have that. And then give the leadership that ability to choose when and where their teams can be there. But we focus really on, we want everyone back. And if there is any certain requirements that you need to support you, let us know, and we're happy to help you with that. So I do think that we have to also to support our hotel operations because they've been open. So I also think you balance that, right, between what service we provide to those hotels as well.
Yeah, that fairness issue is an interesting one, right? The executives don't have to come in, and yet everyone else does. And that can give you a bad optic, right? I also really appreciated your cultural differences. It is different in Switzerland than it is in Dubai, as would be in Canada. So Nabeela,
it's fascinating listening to my colleagues here as well, because it's interesting. Obviously, Walmart's also a frontline organization. The large majority of our 100,000 associates have been and continue to be servicing Canadians from coast to coast in our stores and our DCs. Yet, because of, again, how the pandemic has been managed in Canada, relatively strong lockdowns. And so we've been predominantly in the head office, 100% virtual, with a few exceptions where lockdowns have been lifted and people could get back together. Just last March, where mask mandates lifted, and for the first time, people are actually interacting with each other without masks where they feel safe to do so. So, we have a plan to move to a hybrid model at the end of the summer. And one of the commitments that I think, if we think about leadership mindset, I'll just kind of go back a little bit to Xavier's, the question that you asked Xavier. One of the things that we did early on is talked about what do we believe to be true about, remote work, working in person, and hybrid work. And I think one of the beliefs that we had to address is that, we knew how to work 100% in person. There was deficiencies in that. We just accepted them and accommodated for them. We just accepted them for what they were. And then overnight, we moved to 100% virtual in our case, and we learned to do that. And we actually saw that our stores and our DCs reported a higher level of support. We actually saw it because we survey our stores and DCs and how they feel they're being supported. And actually, we saw a higher level of support from our head office when we were 100% remote. So we've shown that we can work, we know how to work in 100% in person. We've shown that we can manage massive business in the middle of the pandemic, with a frontline business with supporting the organization virtually. And so we believe we can do it successfully in a hybrid way as well. And, so we have to believe that it's possible, first of all, and that's something that we had to have a conversation about. And then we actually asked all of our senior leaders to design the hybrid work that they would love and try to understand their personal preferences. And we wanted them to understand their personal preferences because it's important as a leader that you balance your personal preference with the needs of the organization, the needs of the team, and the needs of the individual. And that's where it gets really hard. I may, for example, have a bias towards working remotely. I have to be able to know that and set that aside to really make sure I balance the totality of the needs of the company, my team, and the individual. Another leader may have a bias of working in person. So we tried to help leaders identify what their bias was. And then we asked them to have conversations with each of their associates and their teams to figure out what that could look like. And now we have that as a base to move into, what hybrid will look like for us. We aren't there yet. So again, I think we're still in that, leadership mindset, training, preparation. And we committed also to giving our associates a really long runway. We committed to saying you would have kind of a 6 months grace period to transition because everyone set their lives into this kind of way. And we need to give people time to reset their lives. And that's currently the time frame that we're in. So we're still, focused heavily on, training, mindset, and preparation as we move into fully a hybrid environment.
I love that. I love three very distinct and different perspectives here, but extremely good takeaways. And I want to follow up with Melisa a little bit because you talked about the different cultures. You talked about not only hybrid, but also things are very different in China than they are for your property in the US versus your property in Switzerland, et cetera. So how do you create this rich culture and employee engagement experience when people have very different work experiences?
Yeah, great question. And I think, really, it's that communication. For me, it's key. It's also that communication in your messaging. So, even with a hybrid environment or even, on property, our communication has always been very straightforward during the pandemic. We're in the same boat. This is how bad it is, unfortunately, but this is how we are going to do it together. And that has always been our consistent messaging and has always been our messaging within Kempinski. It's a very family environment and, we're very approachable. So when I go to a hotel, I'm Melisa. They can come and talk to me. I visit the hotels, the same with our CEO, the same with all of our leadership. So we have this very family focused environment. And I think for us, it's really just because at the end of the day, whether our culture is different, we want the same thing. We want to belong. We want to know that we're cared for. We want to be listened to. The really basic 101, why we do HR. And honestly, as leaders, we really, empower them to have that same mindset that HR is not just for HR colleagues, but it's also for leadership to take that on and have that same conversation. Performance is so important, having that conversation. I mean, we all know we have appraisals once a year. You might have it twice a year because you have a midterm review, but it's also for me so funny that it's always a surprise. Oh, it's that time of the year again. Yes, believe it or not, we talk about our performance and we give feedback. So for me, communication, feedback, listening to our employees is really key. And I think that's why not overcomplicating HR, really keeping the simple cycle of what our people need, what they're looking for, and giving that to them and always ask feedback because I'm a real driver for, engagement surveys, hearing from them and then applying that back, into the field. So for me, that's really the culture, in a nutshell.
That's great. And I love that. And I know, Nabeela, I think about, I go into the Walmart a week ago in Lethbridge when I was up there. Very different probably experience than being, in the heart of Toronto or Vancouver, but you're still creating a consistent culture, an experience for me as a customer. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to working in a hybrid way, and I think Xavier said it earlier, we need to, for me, it's not about being like at a certain place. We've it's not about being on the campus or in the store or in the DC. It's about human connection. The Walmart culture is built on, being together. And I think it's about creating those opportunities for people to be together and making those opportunities, I think, meaningful and purposeful, both in a planned and unplanned way. So we are really looking at all of those moments that matter throughout a year, and how do we really bring people together in a way that reinforces our culture, reinforces our values, reinforces our key strategies, strengthens the connective tissue between people throughout the organization, whether it's, someone from the head office going to a store in DC, or it's, bringing our store managers in and having, one of these big annual meetings that really injects people with a sense of what it means to work at Walmart, or all of those like moments that matter throughout the year that are truly, I think, iconic in, how we come together and how we reinforce our culture and who we are, as well as we've given, really clear recommendations for the types of interactions that we think are most beneficial to be done in person, right? I think one of the things that we've learned is that meetings are really efficient on Zoom. Like, it's really efficient to have meetings on Zoom, but when you're onboarding an associate, being there in person together for their first day, having a cup of coffee with them, welcoming them, walking them around the campus or the store or the DC, buying them lunch or having those moments are the moments that people remember. How were they welcomed? And those are the moments, for example, we've said, meeting an associate on their first day is something we recommend you do in person. Can it be done virtually? Yes. Is that how we would recommend you do it? No. And so I think we've actually looked at those moments throughout an associate's life cycle and made recommendations for when we recommend that, we interact in person and when it would be more ideal to do in a hybrid way. Again, I think this is all still in preparation for us as we move into that hybrid world. And we've basically said, I can make one guarantee. It's going to be hard because it takes a lot more effort and thinking those things through. But we can do it, and we can learn how to do it, just like we learned how to do, work virtually overnight, virtually basically overnight. So it's going to require a bit of muscle building, but it's definitely something we believe is doable. So that's where we are.
Oh, that's great. And Chester and I have been to some of those Walmart manager meetings, and they're a lot of fun. So thanks for inviting us. Xavier, probably you are the most remote workforce of our group right here. So how do you do this? How do you build a consistent culture in a world where you were remote for a couple of years? Now you're trying to be hybrid. How do you do that?
First of all, I'm personally convinced that culture is a competitive advantage towards the competition. This is something that even if you share the same values or the same behaviors with different companies, the way you're going to live them within your own context and your own frame will be totally different. So, which means that companies nowadays, and personally, we are pushing to really cultivate this high performance culture. And this is something that we have re-energized within our organization. During the pandemic, we leveraged this situation to repurpose our business. And we engage our people, our leaders, and people down to the sales rep to our purpose. And we came to a purpose that was appealing and meaningful internally and also to our customers. And our purpose is around advancing health and nutrition. And we work into the veg industry, the vegetable seeds industry. And this is contributing to the global purpose of Bayer, that is health for all, hunger for none. Then in this frame, what we have been doing is to define some cultural traits with the support of our people. And then we have really fully empowered our people across the geographies, from South America to Australia, from North America to Europe and APAC. And we really empower them to allow them to be themselves and to take the ownership of implementing this culture. I personally believe that one size fits not all the time. We need to really be aware of the different backgrounds, the different cultures, origins, and so on and so forth. And we need to allow the people to be themselves into the global frame. And once you are freeing the resources, the energies, people, they really step up. They will say they develop themselves in a way that they are not even aware they were able to. And this is what I call the concept of authentic leadership, where really we want to get our people working and capitalizing on their strengths and really using those ones to the benefit of themselves, to be truly themselves, develop the team, and really striving the organization towards this high-performance culture. There's one thing that I like to mention as well. One of our motto and my personal motto is that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go together. Some people may see that working globally is a challenge. For my perspective and within Bayer, we look at it as an opportunity to become better.
It's so, you're really speaking our language when you say, culture is that competitive advantage. And I really appreciated when you said we give them the framework and then we give them, they can be creative within that framework. A friend of ours wrote a book called what was it, Adrian? The freedom of restraints. When you know what the sandbox looks like, then go play in the sandbox and trust your people to do that. Right. So Nabeela, it's like every time you and I talk, there are two words that come up: purpose and intentionality. I mean, it's kind of the Nabeela, mantra. So, you talk a lot about that in developing the hybrid culture. You're being purposeful and intentional. So define what that is and how does that help you build that connective tissue? You mentioned that human connection is what Walmart's all about. So
yeah, absolutely. So if I just build on what I was saying earlier, right? So we had this process of leaders defining the hybrid work that they would love, identifying their own kind of preferences and what drives them to work in a hybrid way. We then had them have these conversations with their teams. Teams created the hybrid work that they would love. And we have aggregated all of that, right? And we've looked at all of that. We've also pulsed all of our associates regularly throughout the entire pandemic to hear what they think and what they need. As I said earlier, part of that insight was understanding the concerns about women in our workforce. And now we're pulling all that together in a playbook that we're working to publish for our organization that builds our, recommendations, as well as benchmarking with many, many organizations that are further ahead of us. Because in Canada, like I said, we are slightly behind in terms of opening up and coming back to the office. So we have lots to learn from our partners in our Walmart US and China and other parts of the world that have actually, gone through this journey. We've benchmarked across tons of endless organizations, all the way from like fully remote organizations to organizations that have like Melisa's basically been in person the whole time through the pandemic. And we've tried to aggregate all of this into, recommendations and guidelines for our leaders so that, when they have these circumstances that they're going to be facing, whether it's, planning meetings or planning onboarding, or it's planning offsites, or it's, connecting in new ways, that they have the kind of the intelligence that we've gathered over the last 2 years in one place that they can easily reference and use. And then we've set like everything. I'm a huge data person, as you know, Chester. We've set measurements that we're going to measure throughout this journey. We've built dashboard that we're going to use to identify, how well are we doing in terms of inclusivity and equity and engagement and connection, throughout this hybrid world. And we've got a great governance structure with a hybrid steering committee and an individual who's also fully responsible for operationalizing the hybrid way of working in our organization. So we've put resources, we've done a lot of, aggregating with a great playbook, we're measuring, and we've focused on mindset. So I feel really confident and comfortable about where we are moving into this hybrid world. And I believe that, with some learning initially, that we'll figure it out just as well as we figured everything else that's happened throughout the last 2 years.
A quick question came in from Carrie. Wanted to know Nabeela, if you're benchmarking with just retail organizations or across the board.
No, we've benchmarked with everyone, both in Canada and the US and across the world. Everyone from, again, like fully remote distributed companies to companies that have decided to come back fully in person and everything in between. We have stolen with pride from companies that open source their experience and make that available to others. So yeah, no, it's across industries.
Yeah, I love that. The old saying that says, if you steal one idea, it's plagiarism, but you steal a whole bunch of ideas, that's good, solid research, right? Melisa, you had your hand raised.
Yes, Nabeela, I'll send you my email address. I would like a copy of this playbook. Because I was just imagine a world where we had this playbook 2.5 years ago. Can you imagine where we would all be right now? I mean, it's funny because I was actually, when the pandemic broke loose, I actually told my HR population on a call and I said, guys, we don't have a playbook. None of us know what to do. And that's okay. We're going to do this together. So I was just imagining a world where we had this playbook. So please share. That's really lovely.
Xavier, anything you'd add to that? Again, enhancing this connectivity, are there certain things that you've seen work in some parts of the world and don't in other parts of the world?
Yeah, I would say the following. I would say that to me, what did strike me out, especially during those past 2+ years, is in a way, organizations were forced to trust fully the employee base to an extent that no one was thinking it would have been possible. And I personally believe that leadership is about giving trust to others that they can really move forward and dare to risk, dare to challenge, dare to innovate, dare to provide ideas, dare to discuss, dare to disagree. And I think in a way, as I said, the situation forced everybody to trust each other that we will do our best. And I think this trust is an element extremely important to connect people together and to connect energy and to really rally the team and to achieve even better outcomes. Now I can sense that with this hybrid model, and maybe this is me thinking strangely, but I feel that there is a way to get back the control on things and to get the leash a bit tighter, because maybe it was too large and nobody was really able to monitor things. And in this VUCA world, when you are not really in control, some people stress and freak out. And I believe as a leader, you need to embrace the VUCA and flip it in a way that you really provide vision to your people, the understanding, the clarity, and you get your people more agile to changes, because changes will happen no matter what. So to back to what I said, I think trust is an important element, and we need to be very mindful with this hybrid model that we don't lose this trust component that has been so instrumental for all the businesses around, and my particular business, because we have been achieving results that we didn't think that it would have been possible. And in a scenario, in an environment that was really challenging because we couldn't meet together, something that was impossible in the past.
Can I just comment on Xavier's comments? Yeah, I think that's why having a conversation about belief is so important, because that's where you actually can unearth the underlying fears that people have. Like, and if people are afraid of what it might, people are afraid of FOMO. I'll give you a great example. We had our first, kind of hybrid meeting last November. It was in just a brief opening in between lockdowns. And we had a holiday meeting, and it was a hybrid meeting. And actually one of the leaders who was virtually participating, she said, she vocalized, I have fear of missing out because I'm not there. And I said, thank you for vocalizing that, because this is something that you said it. A lot of people who are on the call feel it. So how do we address that? Where does that come from? What do you feel like you're missing? And how do we either try to create some equity around that in a virtual world, or how do we address it? And we were able to have a conversation about that. And I was really proud of her saying that. I think another just example on language is really important, right? This isn't about being on campus or being on site. This is about being together. And so if we really make it about human connection and being together, and that being a pivotal part of our cultures and what makes our companies unique, then I think the conversation is different. And a great example is, again, we had another hybrid meeting where it was the first time where the Canadian leadership team were in one place together, in the kind of first year and a half of the pandemic. And the feedback was from everyone was like, wow, it's so nice to see you guys together. You look like you're having a lot of fun. And it was interesting comment, because the kind of the banter and the quirkiness and the fun, kind of factor wasn't coming out when we were all together on a screen, but came out when we were all together in person. And that was meaningful for the organization to see. It meant, something to see how do we function. those are the things that, where my ears go up and we pay attention to, like, how do we recreate that? How do we do that more so that people really get connected together?
Well, and I think Nabeela, you're leading us beautifully into our last question, because I see our time. We're going to end by it in about 10 minutes or so. And this is the role of mental health in driving engagement that we have really not addressed before the pandemic hit that well. And now all of your organizations are worrying more about this, the whole person, especially their mental health. So Xavier, I'll start with this question with you: is how does mental health wellness impact culture, and what are you doing about this in this kind of post maybe COVID world?
Yes, definitely. It does impact significantly. And this is quite amazing that you asked me the question nowadays, because currently within my organization, we are organizing workshops on those elements. And some of my leaders, when I did present the objectives of this program, because at the end of the day, it's really intangible. You don't know what you are going to achieve, and so on and so forth. It's really to help the organization feeling better, and each and every of us feeling better. So some of my leaders told me, how are we going to measure if it's a success or not? I said, it's a good question coming from my CFO. I said, sometimes you can't measure everything. It's what I can measure is the fact that if we don't do it, there might have some consequences, because people won't have the forum to express those needs. And recently we have organized the first two workshops, and to my great, surprise to my group, the great news was the fact that there were seats for 40 people, 40, and we had a demand for 150. So then we have organized 2 workshops, and now there are 5 workshops in a row, and everybody is really contributing. What is striking me out in those workshops is that people were really sharing openly what they were facing, either individually or professionally. And I think that did crack down the ice, and now I think people got the feeling that, we are all experiencing the same thing, because you hear that the hybrid model is the way to go, and some people are uncomfortable with it, some people are comfortable with it. So we need to really help people to get on their way. And what becomes very important during those 2 years, and that will become even more important moving forward, is the work-life balance. The work-life balance, for me, is a very critical topic, and we need to get people in the driving seat of their own work-life balance. And if as a company you don't create those forums where people can freely tell what's good and what's wrong, then you have the risk that people will be, you won't retain the talents, and you won't retain the people, or they're going to disconnect from your true purpose and the overall adventure of working together.
A quick question came in from Janet to Xavier, just saying, what are the themes of the workshops that you're doing? She heard 5, but she's saying, but interactivity versus content. Tell us a little bit about the workshops.
It's very much around how people feel, and make them reflecting on the past 2 years, reflecting on what they learned, what was very challenging, and how they overcome it. And that was the first element of the workshop. And the second element of the workshop is how we can leverage this new working environment, where we need to find balance between the hybrid model and the requirements and expectations from the people. And I think there were 2 elements in this workshop that did help people to reflect, pause in a way, and also to project themselves into the new working environment. Because, the society tells you, and the societies tell you, that the future way to go is the hybrid model. Whether you like it or not, it's going to be like that. And if you force people to do something, as a human being, you resist.
Yeah.
So you really need to get people feeling that they can shape this environment, and they can really do things differently, and they can do things the way they want and the way they like.
Beautiful. Good. All right, and I'm noticing our time. So, Melisa, if you had 1 minute to kind of add on to what Xavier's talking about with this idea of wellness, mental health, how it fits into your culture and engagement, what would you say?
Such an important topic, a topic that has always been there, but we just never really addressed. And we're a bit late, and myself, our organization included. I think it's always that not so nice topic to talk about, which is really mental health and, well-being. And I think we've approached well-being, and we probably called it a bit more engagement. So activities around that, I think the work-life balance became much more apparent the last few years. And I really see that. I mean, the Great Resignation is a topic we could speak on for days, but because of that, people start questioning, why am I doing this? Why am I working in hospitality when I might lose my job because the hotel is closing, for example? And people are now saying, well, I have options. I have choices. My organization needs to take care of me. So I think it's really, we need to listen to our people and we need to be flexible. So, I mean, what Xavier and Nabeela has rightfully said with all their, what they are doing within their organization, it is really for me it's a moving part of many parts. It's not something that we can set in stone. Nabeela mentioned that this is going to be an amazing book of, what leaders can do when something like this happens. Not a set in stone, you have to move. I think it's going to be a very moving, changing, very important topic that we need to stay on top of and educate our leaders to be better, because they're really at the forefront of facing our employees. And educate them as well.
Yeah, well said. Nabeela, I'm going to give you the last minute because you and I and Chester, we've talked a lot about this subject. I know it's near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, I mean, we started a well-being movement just a few months into the pandemic, and I would say we're a year into that movement. It does start with destigmatizing and starting to have the hard conversations about mental health and well-being. So much, I think we've made so much progress in how do we measure it, the resources that we provide, the conversations that we have. We've trained 1,000 leaders to be mental health first aid certified. We're on a journey to become a psychologically empowering and safe workplace through the Mental Health Commission of Canada. So lots of work. Actually, next week, the Canadian leadership team are all going through 7 hours of training to be mental health first aid certified. And if that doesn't show you the commitment around mental health at the highest levels of leadership, I don't know what could, but I think that's an indication of the commitment that we have to this. But the work is nowhere near being done. We need to get to 100,000 associates, and we still have a long way to go. But happy to talk more about that. I think it's, the COVID is becoming endemic, but the mental health crisis is a global pandemic. And I think we need to take what we've learned about our response to COVID and apply it to mental health. And, that's how serious I think it is. So lots of work to be done there.
Yeah, the commitment that Walmart Canada has made really is remarkable, and really thanks to Nabeela. Melisa, anxiety rates really are sky high. I know we're tight on time. Adrian, I always love to ask our guests, what are some of your personal rituals that keep your anxiety levels down and keep you so that you could, we always say, put your mask on first so you can help the other people. What are some of the things that you're doing, to keep your well-being in a good place?
Because you see the dark circles under my eyes. Or what? So first of all, the lighting is terrible, but yes, we have anxiety. So honestly, it's interesting because I think HR was so at the forefront of the pandemic, super stressed, and we didn't take care of ourselves. And I say that to my leaders as well within the organization. I really had to push myself to do that. I don't know, when you just on it and you're just in it, you just go through it. So I had to really pause myself because it became a lot. And for me, it was very important to be healthy. And of course, we all stress eat. I do. And I had to make a choice to be healthier. And I took up actually kickboxing, which is amazing. And, I do have a bit of a Netflix addiction as well. But I think it's finding that, thing that just gives you me time, because I think it's very hard when you give yourself so much to others, because that's what we did in the pandemic and we still do when people are coming out of it. that me time for me was really crucial, to just take those few minutes, and even sometimes in the day, just mindfulness, just sitting there, breathing in and out, counting, just, it's going to be okay, Melisa, we're going to do this, whatever it takes. But that was crucial for me. Yeah.
All is well. We do need to close, but I do want to share, we were on another panel and Melisa said her kickboxing was great because there was always the face of that person that you wanted to kick. And that was very cathartic for you.
And we all have it. We all have that face. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So go ahead, Adrian, take us out.
Just a quick little reminder from our sponsors at Vantage Circle. For sitting through our session today, you can get a complimentary air assessment that Nikhil talked about a minute ago, and it allows you to get an assessment for free of charge of your employee recognition program. Only takes about 10 minutes, and it really is worth it. And also, they're going to choose 20 people to do a full pack proprietary advisory service, and that's really worth it as well. So what do? You can either take a picture of that long URL or scan the QR code. Gotta love those. Love the simplicity of this. So we will, of course, send this out to everybody who has registered today. But please take advantage of that. Help out our sponsor for bringing our amazing guests to us today and putting this on. So Chester, I'll send it back to you to close us out.
Yeah, listen, thanks so much, Melisa, Xavier, and Nabeela for your time. Thanks to everybody that tuned in. There were some more questions in the box there, Nabeela. People want that playbook. So I think you could make a buck on the side by publishing that. We are just so thrilled to be able to have these workshops, to share these best practices literally from around the world, from such quality people. And again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to our sponsor, Vantage Circle, and for their wonderful offer. We hope you have a great rest of your day, that you're happy, that you're healthy, that you're engaged, whether you're in person or hybrid. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.